The Shadows, When Science Meets Buddha-Dharma. Timeline of the Universe. A representation of the evolution of the universe over 13.77 billion years. The far left depicts the earliest moment we can now probe, when a period of inflation produced a burst of exponential growth in the universe. Size is depicted by the vertical extent of the grid in this graphic. For the next several billion years, the expansion of the universe gradually slowed down, as the matter in the universe pulled on itself via gravity. More recently, the expansion has begun to speed up again as the repulsive effects of dark energy have come to dominate the expansion of the universe. The afterglow light seen by WMAP, Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe, was emitted about 375,000 years after inflation, and has traversed the universe largely unimpeded since then. The conditions of earlier times are imprinted on this light. It also forms a backlight for later developments of the universe. Time is the shadow of space. Space-time is the shadow of matter. Matter is the shadow of mind. Phenomenon is the shadow of noumenon. Deluded mind is the shadow of true mind. Pseudo-self is the shadow true self. Science and all dharmas are shadows, in the great perfect mirror. Dharma Door for perfect mastery through wind element.
风大圆通法门，琉璃光法王子，我忆往昔经恒河沙劫，有佛出世名无量生，开示菩萨本觉妙明，观此世界及众生身，皆是妄愿风力所转。我于尔时观界安立。观事动时，观身动止，观心动念，诸动无二，等无差别。我时了觉此群动性，来无所从，去无所至，十方为尘颠倒众生同一虚妄。
Dharma Prince of Lapis Lazuli Light, I recall while going back to a time, that is as many eons as the quantity of the sands of the Ganges ago. A Buddha appeared in the world, named Buddha of Immeasurable Sound. At that time, Immeasurable Sound Tathagata instructed the Bodhisattvas to observe the innate perceiving ability, and the wondrous lucid awareness, namely the unique nature of Tathagatagarbha, the wondrous true suchness mind. He instructed the assembly to observe that the world they inhabited, and the physical bodies of sentient beings, were all illusory and clinging, moved by the force of wind. At that time, following the Buddha's teachings, I observed the establishment of directions and locations. Within spaces, I observed the shifting of three time domains, the past, present and future, that activated the flow of time. I observed the movement and stillness of the physical body. I observed the movement of mind, that caused the arising of thoughts in the consciousness aggregate. However, these various movements were not actually two kinds, but the same kind of movement, all equal and without difference. I clearly perceived then, that these different kinds of movement, had no origin when they appeared, nor a destination when they departed. All the topsy-turvy sentient beings in the 10 directions, as numerous as the micro-dust particles, were in the same illusory clinging state. Time, the shadow of space. Since the beginning of this gravitational singularity, and the Big Bang, time and space have emerged or been born from the spaceless nihility/nihility. From then on, space has been carrying time and traveling inseparably, through the highest heaven and the deepest netherworld, wandering to the ends of the earth, and traversing through 10 directions of the world, and 3 time domains, that is the past, present, and future. However, long before the Big Bang theory emerged, humanity first developed a vague concept about time and space. After a long period of time, wise people gradually developed a great curiosity and question, what are time and space? After the emergence of the Big Bang Theory, humanity's curiosity and questions about time and space turned into, where were time and space before the Big Bang? Or was it only nihility, completely without time and space before the Big Bang? This should be because human intelligence and the relationship between humans and the physical world had developed to the state when they were able to conduct deep thinking and reasoning about the universe and the starry sky with language and words. If the universe is not the answer, what is the true and ultimate answer? The Nobel laureate American experimental physicist, Leon Max Lederman co-authored The God Particle, If the Universe is the Answer, What is the Question?, with Dick Teresi. This book was to explore the history of particle physics, and the process of searching for Higgs boson. Due to its elusive and unpredictable behavior, Higgs boson was also ridiculed as the goddamn particle or the damned God particle. From this book's subtitle, If the Universe is the Answer, Then What is the Question?, we may find out, Lederman and the scientific community did not recognize NTN particle, next to nihility particle, that is much smaller than the string in superstring theory, as well as the finest and most elusive particle in the universe. And nor did they understand the connotation, meaning, and differences and relationships among the emptiness/emptiness nature, that has self-nature and functions, the space as defined by science, and the spaceless nihility that cannot be touched by Riemannian geometry, tensor calculus, and Calabi-Yau space. Furthermore, they did not understand the connotation, meaning, and differences between the phenomenal realm and the noumenal realm. Therefore, here is the response from NTN particle to Lederman. The problem is, the universe is not the answer, your assumption is incorrect, this is the real problem. Therefore, your question should have been asked reversely as, if the universe is not the answer, what is the true and ultimate answer? Moreover, here is the response from NPASN to Lederman. God, particle, and universe are all arising, falling, transient, phenomenal and within the three realms, whereas only Tathagatagarbha/BTBT, Buddha to be treasurer, that is non-arising, non-falling, eternal, noumenal, in and also not in the three realms, is the true, consummate, and ultimate answer. Note Tathagatagarbha/BTBT, Buddha to be treasurer, is as non-performing as the spaceless nihility, therefore it is also called NPASN, non-performing as the spaceless nihility. In fact, it was only after the development and awakening of human wisdom, and the gradually formed concepts and understandings about planar space, three-dimensional space, time, etc., then theories of gravitational singularities and Big Bang emerged. Of course, before developing the theories such as Big Bang, special relativity, general relativity, superstring, and etc., mathematical tools such as geometry, trigonometric functions, algebra, calculus, and etc. were developed beforehand, in order to measure and calculate time and space, thus enabling later generations to explain and develop theories about various physical, astronomical, and etc. phenomena. This means that whenever there are major breakthroughs or advancements in mathematical knowledge and theories, existing theories and explanations in physics and astronomy might need to be revised, or even overturned. Therefore, scientists' skepticism about the Big Bang Theory is justified, because the Big Bang Theory raises questions that even itself cannot answer. Where were time and space before the Big Bang? Principles and laws are only discovered, not invented. This also explains that, whenever a phenomenon cannot be explained, scientists do not say they do not know the root cause of the phenomenon, that is what the truth is. Instead, they first make assumptions and conjectures, and then, whether they can prove them through experiments or not, they summarize them into axioms. Therefore, strictly speaking, axioms are only discovered, not invented. Universal gravitation is a name we derived from phenomena, and it cannot be said to be the cause. Nobody knows why there is inertia. Physics is an empirical science, its principles are things nobody understands, they cannot be pushed further. I don't know. The great secret of scientists, they know the principles and laws, but not the reasons why. For example, although human science has not been able to explain whether light and electricity are particles or waves, as well as the phenomenon of quantum entanglement, it has not hindered the birth and widespread application of quantum mechanics. For another example, when academician Xingtung was studying Einstein's equations, he discovered that matter can only determine part of the curvature of spacetime, which puzzled him. He wondered if he could find a vacuum, i.e., spacetime without matter, where the curvature was not zero, i.e., gravity was not zero. The Schwarzschild solution to Einstein's gravity equation has such a property. It describes a non-rotating black hole, a vacuum solution, without matter. But strangely, the unusual gravity produces mass here. However, this solution has a singularity, where all physical laws do not apply, because at this point, the curvature of spacetime is equal to infinity, but the curvature of spacetime should not be equal to infinity. So at that point, all physical laws do not hold. But this does not prevent the value and ubiquitous application of the theory of relativity and all physical laws. Therefore, over time, the authority implied by the words and concepts, such as scientific principles, laws, and formulas, makes them unquestionable truths, and science increasingly becomes the spokesperson for truth. The general public unknowingly absorbs this concept. Until many years later, when the old theory cannot explain new phenomena, and must be revised or overturned, the new theory emerges as a matter of course. For example, when Newtonian mechanics encountered quantum phenomena that it could not explain, classical physics had to make way for quantum physics. However, the status of science as the spokesperson for truth remains unshakable, it is just that the new version of truth replaces the old version of truth. Since there is wind element, why bother inventing cosmological constant? Another interesting but ironic example is the cosmological constant, often denoted by the Greek letter lambda. It is an artificial correction term added by Einstein to the equations of general relativity. This stems from Einstein's philosophical belief in a static universe, because without this addition, the original version of Einstein's equations derived from general relativity would lead to a dynamic universe. Therefore, incorporating the cosmological constant was rather for a philosophical than purely scientific reason. Cosmological constant represents the vacuum energy density of space itself, and on a large cosmic scale, it produces a repulsive gravitational effect, explaining why the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate. It is also the simplest explanation for dark energy in modern physics. But after Hubble proposed the astronomical observation result, Hubble redshift, proving that the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate, Einstein abandoned the cosmological constant, considering it the biggest mistake of my life. However, research in astrophysics and cosmology in 1998, on the accelerated expansion of the universe, revived the cosmological constant, suggesting that although its value is very small, it may not be zero, and the contribution of the cosmological constant is believed to be related to the discovery of dark energy. Unfortunately, Einstein didn't have the wholesome affinities with the Dharma Door for perfect mastery through wind element, otherwise, probably he would have been able to figure out when the universe shall fall and cease. After Einstein's teacher Hermann Minkowski geometrized special relativity, he found a Riemannian space with the Lorentz group as its isometric transformation group, which could explain all the phenomena of special relativity. However, this also resulted in space plus time becoming four-dimensional spacetime, and space could no longer be separated. The inseparable spacetime also increasingly showed that time is the shadow of space. The discovery that time can be used as a tool to measure and define space, direction, distance, speed, etc., can be considered one of the earliest and greatest discoveries of humankind. In fact, since ancient times, before the development of specific definitions for the relationship between time and space, humankind had already discovered methods to measure and define time, thus developing time units such as day, night, hour, month, season, and year. Furthermore, by utilizing the knowledge about time, as well as using time as a tool, they developed methods to measure and define space, distance, speed, etc., as well as units of distance, length, size, two-dimensional plane, and three-dimensional space, such as an arrow's flight, 1 day's journey, inch, foot, mile, liter, and peck. Without theoretical foundations, precision instruments, and equipment, relying solely on observation and contemplation, such as observing mountains, rivers, planets, the sun, various spheres in the sky, Milky Way, and etc., our ancestors gradually discovered the wondrous relationship between time and space. Then they fully developed and utilized these two vital natural resources for life and survival, thus creating many magnificent civilizations in later generations, a truly remarkable and incredible feat. Therefore, we can say, the discovery of method to measure and define time is one of humanity's earliest and greatest discoveries. The invention of time units such as day, night, hour, month, season, and year can be considered one of the earliest and greatest inventions of mankind. The discovery that time can be used as a tool to measure and define space, direction, distance, speed, etc., can be considered one of the earliest and greatest discoveries of humankind. The invention of units of distance, length, size, two-dimensional plane, and three-dimensional space, such as arrow's flight, 1 day's journey, inch, foot, mile, liter, and peck, can be said to be one of the earliest and greatest inventions of mankind. The following examples, which are relevant to our lives and modern technological civilization, illustrate the importance of mastering and utilizing the knowledge and know-how about time and space, these two ubiquitous natural resources. Case Study 1. FDMA vs TDMA. Frequency Division Multiple Access, FDMA, is a technology used in the first generation, 1G, analog mobile phone system, AMPS, Advanced Mobile Phone System. Time Division Multiple Access, TDMA, is a technology used in the second generation, 2G, Digital Mobile Phone System, GSM, Global System for Mobile Communications. The following briefly explains how the different utilizations of spatial and temporal resources result in different SE, spectral efficiencies, for FDMA and TDMA. First, let's explain. SE measures how effectively a communication system utilizes limited frequency spectrum to transmit data. It is defined as the net data throughput, divided by the communication channel's bandwidth, typically expressed in bits, per second, per hertz, bps/hertz. The formula for calculating spectral efficiency, SE, is SE equals capacity, in bits per second, / bandwidth, in hertz. For example, a 5G system that uses a spectrum of 100 MHz can deliver 500 Mbps of throughput, so its SE is 5 bps/hertz. TDMA improves spectral efficiency over FDMA by sharing a single, wider frequency channel among multiple users through time slicing. This eliminates the need for physical, guard bands, unused frequency buffers, between individual users, allowing significantly more simultaneous calls or data streams to fit into the exact same slice of radio spectrum. The following further explains what approaches that TDMA takes to improve the spectral efficiency. Time slot multiplexing. FDMA assigns one dedicated frequency carrier to a single user for the duration of the call, but TDMA groups multiple users into a frame, where each user takes turn transmitting short, rapid bursts of data. Elimination of guard bands. In FDMA, empty frequency space must be kept used between adjacent channels, to prevent bleeding/interference, S/N ratio issues. However, TDMA separates channels in time, rather than frequency, hence it avoids such wastage. Digital compression. TDMA requires digital transmission, like GSM networks. This allows carriers to use advanced speech coders, vocoders, that compress voice data to around 4.6 kbps to 13 kbps, therefore, multiple virtual channels may fit in a standard 200 kHz carrier wave. Dynamic bandwidth allocation. TDMA systems can flexibly assign multiple time slots to a single user, if he/she needs higher data rates, example n slots per frame, reducing resource wastage compared to the rigid FDMA channel bandwidths. The spectrum, electromagnetic waves, time, and space involved in this case, all exist inherently in the boundless natural world, therefore, the beneficiaries of improved SE brought forth by TDMA are numerous. In other words, at a place that is covered by a certain cell, where electromagnetic waves, EM waves, are transmitted from a mobile communication system that employs TDMA technology, can reach through free propagation in the air, then all the end users in that given cell are beneficiaries of TDMA. Think about this: how many cells are there in the whole globe? How many end users are there? Then we know TDMA beneficiaries are all over the globe. Although later TD-SCDMA, time division synchronous code division multiple access, improved SE, mainly because of CDMA, and the associated economic value again, it was not the originator who rigged time and space resources to improve SE, but a follower of upgrading SE, so its significance and contribution cannot be compared with TDMA. Furthermore, when the spatio-temporal system involved in the case or issue is original and natural, the knowledge, know-how, axiom, theorem, laws, and etc., obtained in the process of exploration and development of related technologies, will have a longer lasting and greater significance, role, value, and influence. For example, the first case introduced above, frequency division multiplexing, FDMA, vs time division multiplexing, TDMA. Because EM waves of wireless communication travels freely and as far as it can in the boundless space appeared because of Big Bang, therefore, the knowledge, know-how, axiom, theorem, laws, and etc. gained in the process of exploring and developing frequency division multiplexing, FDMA, vs time division multiplexing, TDMA, have a longer lasting and greater significance, role, value, and influence. For another example, in the third case below, time-based cheese flux vs longitude-based cheese flux, the time, meridian, and direction, and location, longitude and latitude, are related to the planets and space that appeared due to the Big Bang. Therefore, the knowledge, know-how, axiom, theorem, laws, and etc. gained in the process of exploring and developing time-based cheese flux vs longitude-based cheese flux, have a longer lasting and greater significance, role, value, and influence. However, the second case below, geometric scaling vs time scaling, involves the artificially created but limited spaces as well as the shadow time relating to the speed at which light and electricity move in these artificial spaces. Therefore, the knowledge, know-how, axiom, theorem, laws, and etc. gained in the exploration and development of geometric scaling vs time scaling, have relatively limited meaning, function, value, and influence. Case Study 2. Geometric scaling vs time scaling. Tau scaling law is a new technology development principle, proposed by Huawei Semiconductor Business. Its core goal is to replace the traditional geometric scaling, with time scaling and bypass the physical limits of Moore's law, through architectural innovation. Its core meaning is geometric miniaturization vs logic folding. The traditional Moore's law, making transistors smaller and smaller, has approached the physical and cost limits. Tau law advocates against simply shrinking the size, but instead, stacking circuits in multiple layers in vertical space called logic folding. Reducing signal delay, by shortening the physical distance between logic elements, such as vertical stacking, the delay of signal propagation, tau represents the time constant of system response, is reduced, thereby improving the overall chip computing power. This is another typical case of rigging time and space resources to improve system efficiency. However, the originator in this field is Intel's Moore's law, whereas Huawei's Tau law is merely a latecomer. Therefore, its significance and contribution cannot be compared to Moore's law. Moreover, NVIDIA stated that TSMC has been using the same technological path quietly for over 10 years. Probably because TSMC is too famous to have the need of crowning itself with another new law. So Huawei should be considered a later latecomer. The concepts of establishing virtues, establishing merits, and establishing teachings, originating from Zhou tradition, are known as the three imperishables of life. In China, these three concepts have been guiding people on how to bring lasting values to society through different means, allowing life to transcend the limitations of time and space, and achieve spiritual immortality. They are a value proposition in the field of Chinese humanistic thoughts, and have a significant impact on the thoughts and life pursuits of Chinese people. Therefore, if the contribution of Intel, the first-generation originator, is considered establishing virtues, the contribution of TSMC, the second-generation latecomer, should be considered establishing merits, and the contribution of Huawei, the third-generation latecomer, should be considered establishing teachings. In this way, the three can be enshrined in the three imperishables together, on their marks, and abiding by their respective positions, so that Tau scaling law may also be recorded in the annals of science and technology. Before concluding this case study, I would like to pose 2 questions for readers and viewers to investigate and contemplate. 1. How was Dharma Prince of Lapis Lazuli Light able to observe the establishment of directions and locations, within spaces, observe the shifting of 3 time domains, the past, present and future, that activated the flow of time? Was he utilizing geometric scaling, time scaling and time-lapse photography? Or other unimaginable wondrous method and miraculous powers? 2. How was Vimalakirti Bodhisattva able to see this Buddha land of Shakyamuni, the 3,000 great thousand worlds, as if I were looking at an amla fruit in the palm of my hand? Was he utilizing geometric scaling, time scaling and time-lapse photography? Or other unimaginable wondrous method and miraculous powers? Case Study 3. Time-based cheese flux vs. longitude-based cheese flux. This case study differs from the previous 2 case studies in 2 ways. 1. The previous 2 cases discussed how to make good use of time and space, the 2 ubiquitous natural resources, to enhance the interest and well-being in every aspect. However, this case discusses the harm caused by the misuse of time and space resources. 2. The subject in this case is the living sentient beings, represented by human beings, whereas the subjects in the previous 2 cases, electromagnetic waves, chips, and circuits, are all inanimate insentient beings. Insentient beings also include plants that have life phenomena but no life essence. Life is something older than time and space, more mysterious and incomprehensible than quantum entanglement, and more dizzying than wave-particle duality, something that is not a thing at all. Therefore, it is inevitable that the theme of space-time discussed in this article will give rise to a higher-level question: which came first, life or space-time, or is life the cause? Or is space-time the cause? In fact, there is an underlying issue in this issue needing to be explained first, namely, it is because of the appearance of matter that space and its inseparable shadow time appeared in the spaceless nihility. All phenomenal dharmas are impermanent, illusory, arising and ceasing, as well as transforming and changing. This is to say that every single gas molecule, or dust particle in the air represents a space, so the shape and size of the space are the shape and size of the geometric space of that gas molecule or dust particle. By analogy, when a person is born, the world gains a space, its shape is the shape of that person, it is completely filled by that person, it follows that person everywhere, and no one can separate that person from his space. So when a fish leaps out of the water, it creates a space in the spaceless nihility, which is exactly the same size and shape as the fish itself, and when it falls back into the water, this space that arises spontaneously shall disappear. When a bird flies in the air, its space changes with the flap of its wings. When we inhale, the space that our body possesses increases a little bit, and when we exhale, it decreases a little bit. Therefore, our body and the space it possesses are always transforming and changing, simultaneously and in sync with each other. Planets, universe, and their spaces are the same scenarios. This enables us to directly perceive that all phenomenal dharmas are impermanent, illusory, arising and ceasing, as well as transforming and changing. Space and physical body are neither identical nor different and do not encompass each other. Since the spaces of all living and inanimate objects, such as humans, airplanes, plants, planets, the universe, and etc., originated in the same way, and all spaces are seamlessly enveloped by the spaceless nihility/nihility, just like the NTN, next to nihility, particle, all are arising by NTN, ceasing by NTN, changing by ntn, and transforming by ntn, so humans can be described as ntn humans, cars as ntn cars, dogs as ntn dogs, moon as ntn moon, sun as ntn sun, and so on. Conversely, the end of the edge of matter, form, is the spaceless nihility/nihility, therefore the spaceless nihility is called the form by the edge of form. Thus, we are more certain that matter is the cause, space is the effect, and space-time is the shadow of matter. But materialists should not be too happy yet. As mentioned before, matter is not the first cause of the universe and life. The mind, Tathagatagarbha, the wondrous true suchness mind, the NPASN, non-performing as the spaceless nihility, is the fundamental and first cause of the universe and life. Although, with curiosity rather than skepticism, a growing number of neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, psychologists, and parapsychologists have been exploring the mind-blowing idea that changes in space and time, and the sensation of their existence, are all the perceptions, observations, and cognitions of our perceptive conscious mind, yet the unverifiable claim that electromagnetic waves, which encompass light waves, have no inherent properties of brightness and color, brightness and color are actually painted in the mind space of sentient beings, by the greatest and most powerful artist in three realms, the wondrous true suchness mind of TTTTB, Tathagatagarbha treasures the Tathagata-to-be/BTBTTBTB, Buddha-to-be treasurer treasures the Buddha-to-be, to correspond with the karmic consequences of sentient beings. Therefore, brightness and color are the perceptions, observations, and cognitions that exist only in our perceptive conscious mind, presents an even greater challenge to scientists. When discussing painting in the mind space, we must briefly touch upon artificial hallucination. While we can endow artificial intelligence with the capabilities of artificial imagination, we cannot predict or prevent the occurrence of artificial hallucinations. Human hallucinations are mostly caused by brain lesions, medication, or external interference, such as the intrusion of electrical currents and electromagnetic waves via brain-computer interfaces, BCI, or Neuralink. The primary reason for AI hallucinations is that its learning is never deep or broad enough, and its training parameters are never sufficient to cope with the countless environmental conditions and mind states that arise in life. The claim that brain-computer interfaces, BCI, are likely to produce hallucinations, especially illusions and phantoms, stems from the idea that the images and brainscapes, that is the internal mental perceived objects appearing in the human brain, are generated from the individual's own true mind Tathagatagarbha, based on the external light/electromagnetic waves. This process involves converting the electromagnetic signals from the time domain to the frequency domain, and then to the sense domain, performing processes such as brightening, coloring, imaging, and displaying to create the brainscape/internal mental perceived objects. How could BCI possibly perform this correctly? The fervent pursuit of BCI, Neuralink, and artificial intelligence, all based on extremely limited knowledge or even ignorance of the essence of life and the truth of Noumenon, attempts to use limited human knowledge to alter and participate in the mental activities and life phenomena of sentient beings. This is akin to a frog in a well, presumptuously claiming to generate electricity from ocean currents, or a short-lived summer insect, presumptuously discussing the creation of snow and ice. Even more serious is that any behavior that uses instruments, equipment, electromagnetic waves, light waves, sound waves, chemicals, etc., to directly enter the human brain to change, control, and manipulate human mental activities, is an interference with cause and effect, the highest law of the universe, and the karmic consequences in the future lives are unimaginable. Although the motivation for developing brain-computer interfaces, BCI, or Neuralink may be benevolent, it is ultimately just a technological trick that is self-deceiving yet unable to deceive people with discerning eyes and lucid mind. Moreover, if it is used by ambitious people, it will be a great disaster for mankind. Cut from the same cloth. The same applies to simplified Chinese. Although the motivation for simplification is understandable, the coarse simplification has destroyed the prajna wisdom and aesthetics of the Chinese characters, resulting in the humanistically, philosophically, as well as religiously shallow mind. Therefore, simplification of the form of Chinese characters is destructive not only to culture, but also to mind. Harming a language and its characters is harming the related culture, as well as hurting the heart of the people's soul. Therefore, it is only logical to accuse the simplification of Chinese characters as an omen of the tragedy of cultural revolution. Furthermore, every piece of land on earth possesses unique natural resources and value, thus conceiving and giving rise to unique cultures and civilizations. The mind nature and mind's capacity of the people who inhabit there determine the connotation of their culture and the development direction of their civilization. This is true observing vertically the history spanning 3 time domains, and horizontally across the world in 10 directions. Therefore, everything, good or bad, that had happened, is happening, will happen and has an impact on most people, has its cause and the consequential effect. It is a collective manifestation of the mind nature and mind's capacity of all beings. You may know a person's face, but not his mind. Do not overestimate your mind-reading capability. Although all the above-mentioned scenarios belong to the situations of only the wearer knows where the shoe pinches, and personal experience, but perceptions, observations, and cognitions of the perceptive conscious mind, in these 2 different domains are getting more and more complex and profound. Besides, the perceptions, observations and cognitions at this moment, might very well become completely different at the next moment. Because influenced by the various continuously changing states inside as well as outside our body, the phenomena of impermanence and change appearing in perceptions, observations, and cognitions are all beyond our control and also happening instantaneously. However, if we are able to reach certain advanced state in Chan contemplation and meditative concentration, then we should be able to enhance our mind-reading capability and improve this problem. All in all, we should not consider our own perceptions, observations, cognitions, values, experiences of hardship and suffering, as well as life philosophy, as gauge and standards to rashly comment, ridicule and deny the perceptions, observations, cognitions, values, experiences of hardship and suffering, as well as life philosophy of others, because if we often can't even read our own mind well, how can we read others' mind well? So in writing, many times translation is more difficult than creation. Therefore, accepting the premise or assumption that space and its inseparable shadow, time, appeared in the spaceless nihility because of the appearance of matter, the question is life the cause? Or is space-time the cause, should be revised to is life the cause? Or is matter the cause? While this presents a wormhole-like opportunity for science, which primarily explores matter, to enter the metaphysical realm, it also serves as a rhetorical question and logical negation of materialism that is self-contradictory, self-deceiving yet unable to deceive the discerning and lucid people, filled with wrong views and delusions. On the contrary, Buddhism provides a ready-made answer: mind can create form, matter, but form, matter, cannot create mind. Mind is formless, colorless, and non-material. Form refers to matter. Therefore, we can lower the dimension of this issue, and focus solely on the relationship between space-time and the circulation of qi and blood. Getting back to the main point, the most important theory in traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, is about the circulation of qi and blood, as well as the midnight noon and ebb flow. The general understanding of qi is that it is the finest energy in human body, which maintains and protects our life and health. Qi circulates in the meridian system of our body, similar to a closed agricultural irrigation system. Qi circulates throughout the body, and in every 2 hours it fluxes at one of the 12 major meridians and the organ that the meridian in point mainly nourishes, such as the liver meridian and liver. In other words, qi does not only flow to a certain organ or meridian at a specific time, or rather at a specific direction and location, but it flows to every organ and meridian at all times. The flow of qi in the meridian system of human body is similar to the fact that there is always water in the channels of a closed agricultural irrigation system, and the water is always flowing, fluxing, and supplying every field. It's just that in every 2 hours, the sluice gate of a certain field will be opened wider, and more water will enter. Similarly, qi fluxes in an orderly and alternating manner, every 2 hours at one of the 12 main meridians and the organ it nourishes. At any time, qi is still constantly supplying all organs on all meridians. Just as blood nourishes the organs through the adjacent capillaries, fluxing also occurs in the microcirculation at the interface between the meridians and the organs. Our internal organs and meridians are unaware of time, let alone its changes. However, they can sense the magnetic fields and forces in the surrounding environment and their changes, through the water and metals within the body, such as iron. Therefore, the order of the flux of qi in human body is dependent upon the change of human body's spatial orientation due to the Earth's rotation. This is because when human spatial orientation changes, the magnetic fields and forces in the space, as well as the corresponding resonating meridians and organs will also change. Ancient people did not know about the Earth's rotation, but they knew that the sky would lighten and darken. As a result, they developed the concept and system of time, and thus came up with methods and tools to mark the circulation and flux of qi and blood. Over time, the relationship between time and the flux of qi and blood became a law imprinted in people's minds. This was harmless in the agricultural society, when people worked at sunrise and rested at sunset, and traveled no more than 10 miles a day on average. However, in the technological age, when people can travel more than 100 miles an hour, and 10,000 miles a day, whether the relationship between time and the flux of qi and blood can still be considered a law needs to be re-examined with scientific approach. Therefore, this article proposes the case of time-based qi's flux vs longitude-based qi's flux, and uses the following: TLPDQF, time and longitude-based periodic diagram of qi's flux, and LDQCPF, longitude-calibrated diagram of qi's circulation path and flux, to illustrate that it is the change in spatial orientation rather than the change in time that determines which meridian and the organ it belongs to. Qi shall flux at during a given time interval. The following examples illustrate how time zones and time systems established by various countries and regions for political and economic reasons may impact people's lives and health. At Tiananmen Square in Beijing, at longitude coordinates E+116.39, 11 a.m., is the beginning of midday hour, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., as defined by TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, when the body's qi begins to flux at heart. However, in the center of Wuhan, at longitude coordinates E+114.31, although the national time is also 11 a.m., the time defined by TCM is 10:37 a.m., which is C hour, when the body's qi is still fluxing at spleen. Therefore, no matter where you are on Earth, if your daily routine, work, medication, acupuncture, and medical treatment must be carried out according to the time of the day defined by TCM, you must readjust the correct time for your daily routine, work, medication, acupuncture, and medical treatment according to the time of the day defined by TCM. This is especially important for people who frequently travel on highways, high-speed trains, or airplanes, constantly change their spatial orientation at high speeds, because high-speed movement disrupts the order of fluxing of qi and blood, hence preventing the internal organs from receiving proper rest and replenishment of qi and blood. Over time, this can lead to chronic diseases that are difficult to cure. In such cases, it is even more crucial to follow TLPDQF and LDQCPF to take care of one's body and health. Conclusion 1. Physical size is directly proportional to mind's capacity. The shadows of wisdom of specific knowledge pratyavakajana, and wisdom of equality samatajnana. The above examples discuss space-time issues in the physical world, but we may discover a wondrous phenomenon, the equality tendency between the counterparts, that extends into the metaphysical, abstract, spiritual, and mind domain, that is to say, the more vast and enduring the number of sentient beings, as well as the physical size of the space-time in the circumstances that we are facing directly and indirectly, the more equally expansive, magnanimous, and enduring our mind's capacity must be. to handle it well. This phenomenon also implies the spiritual attainment, as well as the states in Chan contemplation and meditative concentration, are the shadows of mind's capacity. Therefore, if we could have sufficient blessings from Buddha, and virtues from Chan cultivation, we might also be able to discover from this phenomenon, the shadows of wisdom of specific knowledge pratyavakajana, and wisdom of equality samattajana, that are still in the embryonic stage to most people. The best example of the equality tendency between the counterparts would be the boundless quantity of the sentient beings, the physical size of 10 directions and 3 time domains, and the mind's capacity of Buddhas thus come and Bodhisattva Mahasattvas. Therefore, we should always be mindful of Buddha, be mindful of the magnificent mind and magnanimous capacity of Buddhas thus come. Therefore, suppose we were able to expand the space, to the point of being as vast as the spaceless nihility, that transcends the 10 directions, as well as stretch the time to the point of being as long as the 3 time domains, namely the past, the present and the future, which span from the beginningless to the endless, then everything would be as transparent and lucid as observing the amla fruit in the palm of one's hand. By then the answer would be no longer important, because the problem would have faded and become so small, that it would be almost non-existent, because by then to us the 3 realms would be almost as tranquil and quiescent as nirvana. However, we wouldn't have to enter nirvana. Therefore, whenever we plant a cause, we must carefully consider the scope and impact of the consequence and retribution of this cause from the perspectives of time and space. Furthermore, due to the principle of he who lies down with dogs shall rise up with fleas, one is influenced by one's company, as well as birds of a feather flock together. Our mind's capacity will become more expansive, magnanimous, and enduring due to the edification effect. Conversely, it will shrink. Therefore, cultivating friendships with kind people, of expansive and magnanimous mind's capacity, as well as acquainting oneself with virtuous and wise mentors, of expansive and magnanimous mind's capacity, are the most important lessons in life. 2. The physical and the metaphysical are inseparable. The above-mentioned phenomena and discoveries also demonstrate that the physical and the metaphysical are inseparable, just as time and space are inseparable, and life is indivisible. 3. Life is indivisible. Life is indivisible because of reincarnation. This poses an unanswerable challenge to materialism, that denies reincarnation, the afterlife, the transcendence of mind over matter, and the doctrine of all 3 realms are created only by the mind, all dharmas are created only by the consciousnesses. Reincarnation is the mechanism for manifesting karma, the platform for executing the law of cause and consequence, and the stage for realizing cause and effect. Reincarnation gives each life a future and continuity, thus making life is indivisible, as well as making each life more meaningful. 4. Reincarnation is a stage for demonstrating wave-particle duality. Life is indivisible, because every life is the same true self, Tathagatagarbha, the wondrous true suchness mind. Although the pseudo-self, the conscious mind, in each life is different and completely new, yet all records and memories of past lives are completely preserved by true self. Although, from the perspective of pseudo-self, each life is independent, discrete, and discontinuous, like photons, electrons, and subatomic particles, that can be scientifically quantified and defined. But from the perspective of true self, each life is seamlessly and continuously connected, like a stream of analog light waves and electromagnetic waves, coming from the beginningless and going towards the endless. Therefore, wave-particle duality is ubiquitous, spanning both the physical and the metaphysical realms. 5. All three realms are created only by the mind, all dharmas are created only by the consciousnesses. Wave-particle duality, quantum entanglement, the uncertainty principle, Schrödinger's cat, gravitational singularities, black holes, dark matter, dark energy, sun, Milky Way, Cowherd boy star, Altair Alpha Aquili, Weaver girl star, Vega Alpha Lyrae, the four fundamental forces of the universe, NTN particle, Chi, the God particle, mass, energy, space-time, light, electricity, brightness, color, pseudo-self, I Ching, the Yellow Emperor's inner classic, the Analects, the teachings of Tahatpi. Psychology, parapsychology, mathematics, physics, chemistry, FDMA, TDMA, CDMA, geometric scaling, time-lapse photography, the pyramids, the Great Wall of China, Newtonian mechanics, quantum mechanics, relativity, the atomic bomb, artificial satellites, AI, humanoid, robots, aliens, electric cars, oil, drones, theory of evolution, materialism, three realms, where life exists, four kinds of birth, six paths, the paths and destinations of reincarnation, the 12 categories of appearances and kinds of beings, and 25 states of existence, DNA, gene, bacteria, virus, TLPDQF, Dharma Door for perfect mastery through wind element, and etc., as well as the theories and knowledge that are discovered, invented, and created by pseudo-self. Anything we can name or imagine is the masterwork of true self that possesses the vast, boundless, subtle, miraculous, profound, and unsurpassed powers. True self, this precious jewel, is the best and most comprehensive source of inspiration for scientific quantum leaps. Therefore, science should learn from Buddha-Dharma and seek Dharma from Buddhist scriptures.
Thank you.